Do you get to see really big trees? That's what we're going to talk about today. Hi, this is Jill from the North Woods talking about nature right outside our front door. Well, big trees are things that I don't have outside my front door. I have a couple of pretty good-sized trees outside my back door. Maybe think about 60 feet tall. There's some big trees in my town, but right where I live right now, there are no giant trees out there. And boy, I have to tell you, I love giant trees. And through my travels, mostly through the United States, I have seen some amazing big trees. And of course, when you think about big, you think about tall, you think about wide around in the trunk basis. You maybe even think about like the most volume of wood that's out there. Lots of ways we can talk about big trees. And when we talk about big trees, my favorite has to be the coastal redwoods. I love them. These are Earth's tallest trees. Did you know that Star Wars with the speed racers going through the forest, that was in our redwood forest? I got to see that forest. I love them. They are a type of sequoia. They grow along these foggy, moist coasts along Northern California, and they're stunning. And not only that, so the first time I saw them, we were driving on a big road trip from Oregon, come down the highway to Crescent City. They just had a big tsunami at Crescent City. And all of a sudden, you smell the smell, and it is the most amazing smell on the planet. And then you go over this hill, and I remember there being this house, and the house looked a little bit like my house. And suddenly there's a tree next to the house, which looks a little bit like the trees I have in my backyard. And then all of a sudden you look up, and there's a tree next to it that's 4 times, bigger than the tree that is in that yard. And suddenly you're like, whoa, these trees have the record for being the tallest trees. The tallest tree we know of is Hyperion, which is about 379.7 feet tall, like a 35-story building. That is an amazing tree. I didn't see that particular tree because you can go see many of these trees, and some of these trees are actually protected, so they don't know where they're at because they worry someone may go in and damage them. But you can see most of these trees. Like I said, I went to Crescent City. We went and saw some redwood places inside of there and got to see it. It was, like I said, it was memorable in my life. And their bark can be about 12 inches thick, protects them from fire, from insects. It absorbs the moisture coming in from that coastal fog, goes right through, through their leaves. They have an adaptation that helps protect them during dry summers, but they have to have that coastal fog. Some people call them the May grays and the June glooms and the July. There's nothing rhymes with July, but you get that idea. They have very shallow root systems considering how tall the trees are, but they interlock with each other. They're neighbors, and so they form like this stable neighborhood of underground networks that strengthens the entire grove. The other trees that I saw, and this was very recently, is my coworkers and I got to go to Yosemite while we were traveling with work, and we rented a car. This is my MO, right? I used to travel for work. I would rent a car. I would spend 2 days or 3 days there. So New York, I went and saw Broadway shows. Philadelphia, I went and saw the Liberty Bell and all the Constitution stuff. But for this particular area, we went out to Yosemite and got to see a quick trip. It is hard to do Yosemite in a short period of time, but we got to see the sequoia trees. And these sequoia trees are not the tallest. That was the funny thing about it, is when I first saw them, I went, oh, it's not really as tall as I'm used to. They can be 200 to 300 feet tall, which is pretty darn tall, but they were thick, 30 feet in diameter. And there are some very big, thick trees. General Sherman stands at 275 and has about 52,000 cubic feet of wood. That is more than the wood that's in 50 houses combined. They are gigantic trees. Some of them are over 2,000 years old. They're very, very old trees. And what's interesting to me is like these trees would be around at the time of Jesus. I saw olive trees that were around at the time of Jesus, that were in the olive grove across the way. they're just regular olive-sized trees. These just keep getting bigger and bigger. And they actually need fire. Their cones open to release seeds with heat exposure. So they expect there to be some fire to give these seedlings the energy they need, the heat they need in order to grow, and to sprout their seeds and path. So those are two of my very favorites. I loved seeing some of those trees. I don't know, they're just stunning to me. But there are some other trees out there in the United States that you can see that are pretty darn big, even if they're not redwood big or sequoia big. And the first one that comes to mind, the Douglas fir. They're found in the Pacific Northwest. They can get to be about over 300 feet tall, and they were important in a lot of the timber industry, for sure. I got a chance, my MO, right? Like I go to hospitals and then I rent a car and I'd go do something. I rented a car and spent the weekend driving in the Olympic National Forest. So I went to all the places that was in the movie Twilight, but the real reason I went there is because I wanted to go and see all the various parks inside of the Olympic Peninsula, including the Hoh rainforest. And I was stunningly amazed. But when I got to this one particular pull-off area near what I think is called Mary Lake, I'm like, what are these trees? They're huge. Douglas firs. And they were all over the place, and they were stunning as well. The other one is Sitka spruces, which are also along the coast in Northern California, all the way up, towards Alaska. They have strong, lightweight wood. They were used initially in airplane frames, guitars, that kind of thing. Also can grow to about 300 feet with pretty good-sized trunks. I have seen just very few Sitka spruces in my life. And I think that it's been great, like I said, to go see them. But there's all sorts of other types of trees. We were talking about, like, what are all the definitions of big? Think about the aspen groves. Aspens are quaking trees. They're somewhat, I think, related to birches. And they look like just trees, right? If you go to this Pando, Utah Fish Lake National Forest, these trees just look like trees. And you say, oh, they're just trees. But here's the thing about them. They're They are genetically identical stems. They are actual, like, clones from each other and connected in that way. And so they consider them through this massive single root system to be one organism. So it is not big this way. They're big this way. And there's like 47,000 things that look like trees that are actually one thing. And it's the largest living organism by mass on Earth. Covers over 100 acres and weighs, I don't know how you weigh a thing, but 13 million pounds. And they say that each trunk itself may only live for about 130 years, but its root system, thousands of years old. And there was one estimate, 8,000 years old. I don't know how you estimate a thing like that. But it is one of the biggest trees, but not in the way that the other trees are the biggest. And like I said, I think they're so cool. I love seeing big trees. If you've never seen a big tree, it is so worth getting yourself to one of these areas and going in to see a big tree. Like I said, for me, the coastal redwoods were so impressive. I love the giant sequoias. I won't say anything bad about them, but the redwoods have my heart. And they're important. They're part of the environment. There's a really good book out there where a guy went up all the coastal redwood trees, not all of them, but he was looking, and essentially, like, each layer was a whole other biosphere of birds, bugs, animals that lived in the layers of the tree. It was almost like a world of itself. This book, I'll try to find the name of it and put the link in the show notes if I can find that book again. I read it a long time ago. But every place where you go up, it's almost like a other world up there of different things. They have a big impact on the environment. They're impressive to see. I'm a big history nut. Seeing the old trees, which is not the same as a big tree, in the Mount Olive in Israel, and knowing this is a 2,000-year-old tree, even though it was just regular tree size. Seeing the coastal redwoods and knowing how old they are. Seeing those sequoias in Yosemite and understanding how old they are, it kind of makes you feel tied that nature and us, we're all tied together in history. And so my challenge to you is if you get a chance, go out there and go find a big tree if you can possibly do it, or go research and look at some of them online. There was one kind of coastal redwood, people cut like a tunnel through and you could drive your car through it. So it's kind of fun to look at pictures of these giant trees that are out there. They're more impressive and smell amazing if you get a chance to see them in person. And I appreciate you watching and listening. And remember, you can always email me at jillstartwithsmallsteps.com. If you have seen a big tree, let me know about it. I'd love to hear about it. Or if there's something that's interesting outside your back door and you want to tell me about it, I do my research, I do an episode about it. Or now I have cool new software. You could actually come on here and maybe tell me about it in person. But I appreciate you being here. Have a great day.